Great morning, friends. Great morning, world. This is your boy, Dr. JC Doornick, and welcome to what I call Make Sense Mondays. What we do on Mondays is we take all of the elements of everything that I'm doing elsewhere, like with the Make Sense podcast and within my community and coaching. We take everything that's just transpired in the previous week and also, collectively with things that are coming up in the week ahead of us and all of the thoughts that I'm having delivered to me that end up manifesting as things that I end up sharing and teaching, and we put them in on Mondays. And the reason why we do that, the value of that would be just in recognizing that Monday is the first day of the week. I don't know how that ever transpired, but we have this day here. If you're listening to this right now, congratulations. Apparently you've been blessed with another 24 hours. A little practice of gratitude there. But this day that would prompt the week, and potentially be this stage or platform upon which you could launch into a new reality and live your best life and things like that. So that being said, there's a lot at stake. But the way that the brain works, our brains, is that we wake up in the morning and just like a computer, our brains will boot up and basically dictate what it is that's going to happen rather than give us the opportunity to decide what's going to happen. So Make Sense Mondays is just this little 20, 30-minute window where we can spend some time together and kind of put the regular scheduled program on pause and give us the opportunity to step into this space and maybe access a little bit more of our conscious, voluntarily conscious part of our brain and discuss something else that would be potentially useful and better suited to support our goals and dreams rather than just hand the keys of trust over to our subconscious program mind to just say, hey, I trust you. Let's go do what we do. So welcome to Make Sense Mondays, all in conjunction with the Make Sense with Dr. JC Doornick podcast. Excited that we just launched a new episode. Can't believe we're already on episode 9. For those of you that have followed, my journey, we had the Years of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast, which was top 1% of the world. And that was a lot of fun. But we've evolved now into my book and a lot of the work that I'm doing within the science of sense making. So very, very excited to, present you guys with the Make Sense podcast. So I hope that you'll enjoy it and, check it out. It's best used as a morning structure. And every Monday you can count on enjoying a new podcast episode. Lots of really, really cool interviews coming starting 2 weeks from now that are already recorded on artificial intelligence, on making sense of things as dramatic as serial killers, making sense of just the whole concept of health. And I've just booked another one with a best-selling author who's going to talk about the science, art, and philosophy, and everything associated with death and dying. This is an amazing individual that is about to share and publish a book called "You Only Die Once." So great conversations coming. Many, many more to be had. Welcome to Make Sense Monday. So let's organically get into what it is that we're going to talk about today. So great morning, Kathy. Great morning, Lindsay. I see people coming in. My best comes out when you guys ask questions. So one of the things that I love to do, completely open and curious and unjaded, untethered to any ideas, anything you guys have to ask pertaining to these topics that I'm talking about, please feel free to ask. And I will respond because this is a live show. If you're watching this as a YouTube recorded show, which is where I put it after, just know that every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, we do this live. And we're going to have to figure that out because live streaming is about to change because Facebook's shutting that down. But we also have the ability to stream on Instagram, and then we could probably do Facebook Lives from our phone. So today we're going to talk about making sense of the way that we look at things. This is a fascinating topic and one that is so relevant. We talk about this all the time in our private community called the Make Sense Academy. I'll probably allude to that a little bit in the minutes to come. But think about how powerful that is. The value, right? Just think about the value and what's on the other side of this idea of executing on changing the way you look at things. I first heard that from Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer was the first person I ever heard that say that quote. If we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. Great morning, Susan, West Coast in the house. So I've written a rise up today. I'm going to share a little bit of that and go a little bit organic, but just imagine what's on the other side of, and also acknowledge what it is that you're trying to accomplish and what's in the way of it, right? One of the things that we love to talk about is the fact that you're forgiven for you know not what you do, in the sense that the way that you look at things right now is very, very much persuaded and enhanced and actually coerced into being the way that you look at things by the way you look at things. So you always have to acknowledge, like, well, who taught me to look at things this way? A lot of times human beings just figure that whatever they see is what they get, but what I say, and I'll put that question in the banner just so you can kind of read it. I think I wrote it out here. Yeah. So what you see is what you get, meaning what I see is what I see, right? I mean, that's indisputable. I could tell you that right now I'm looking at my camera and it's a camera, right? So what you see is what you get. However, the interesting question to ponder is what you get. Is that what actually is, or is it just what you see? Because it gives us the ability to look at this idea that if two people look at the same thing from different vantage points, what's interesting about people is we're all unique and different in our own way, right? So we can acknowledge that two people that come from different experiences, different upbringings, different parents, different programmers, mother, father, teacher, preacher, but also different trauma, different highs, different lows, different countries, different cultures, right? So you can understand how two people could look at something, the same thing, and have a different interpretation of it because they come from different perceptions and vantage points. So acknowledging that is what's fun about this conversation, right? What you see is what you get, but is what you get what actually is, or just what you see? And is there more, right? Is there more than meets the eye? That's what I'm fascinated with today. So great morning, friends. I see some more folks coming in. Great morning, Chris Cushing. Folks from our private community, our Make Sense Academy. We meet every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, and we interact live. Somebody asked me the other day, I met somebody via Instagram, and they were, liking my stuff because we got a lot of content out there. And they were basically saying, how could I work with you? What would it look like to coach with you? Because I've done that one-on-one, but we don't do that anymore. My wife has this passion project called the Make Sense Academy, where we do everything in a group format. She's partnered with this wonderful friend of mine, Jules Loken, and they're creating this amazing environment that I'm very much passionate about and partnering with them on. But we meet every morning and we have these live interactive conversations. So when people ask me, what would it take? What would it look like to coach with you? And I say, oh, well, we can do all of these things. I can mentor you and I can coach you and I can teach you everything I know, give you access to every online course that we've ever created from now and ever will for the rest of your life. And they say, what would that cost? And I say $24 a month. That's all it costs for the Make Sense Academy. So if you're interested in that, we welcome you to comment and reach out to us and just say, make sense. And we'll send you an invitation to check that out risk-free. So let's get into this. It's interesting to look at this goal, right? And acknowledge what's on the other side, the potential value. If I can manage to change the way that I look at things, I mean, it makes sense, right? And have that prompt the things that I'm look at to change. Wouldn't that be cool? If you're in a current reality where you're unsatisfied, you're seeking more physical, mental, financial well-being, wherever you're at, chances are, you just like anybody else want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier, right? We're all seekers of but if you're not satisfied with the outcome, the direction that you're going in, maybe you want to be more, you want to accelerate, you want to get less distracted, get less triggered by things, get less thrown off the beaten path, and just do what probably the most difficult thing for humans to do, and that's just to simply follow through, right? Well, then this is for you, this idea of like, well, what if we change the way we look at things? And the things you look at begin to change. Great morning, Paula. Think about this right now. A lot of people are very, very much aware of the fact that we don't control things, right? We don't control what happens. What do we control? We control our response to it. So what is that about, right? So our response is based on our perception of things. So if we change the way we look at things and our perception and our opinion, right, and the label we give things changes, can you see how that's going to change your response system as well? So if you're looking to have a healthy response system, it starts with you changing the way you look at things. So what's interesting about perception in general, so this is where I'm at. This is actually a future podcast that we're gonna work on. Perception in general and the idea of changing the way that we look at things is how we typically mess it up, right? We typically look at changing the way we look at things without acknowledging and skipping probably what's the most important step. And that would be acknowledging the way. Think about it, right? We say we want to change the way we look at things, but I think first we have to acknowledge and appreciate the way we look at things and how that came to fruition, right? In other words, become aware of how and why we are perceiving things the way that we are. I think a lot of people forget that because it's so powerful, the way you've been programmed and coerced and are tethered to things like core values and principles, things that you stand by. They're very much playing a role in the way you look at things. So if you're not aware of that stuff, and we go into this in the podcast and in the book coming up and stuff, just this idea of acknowledging that stuff, how can you ever change the way you look at things without acknowledging first and appreciating the way came about or is coming about? So all human perception, this is fascinating. All human perceptions are unique, and nobody in the world, you can try to explain or they can try to save you, can ever know what it's like to be you and perceive the world as you, right? The only person that can do that is you. So what would it take for you? That's all that matters here. What would it take for you to execute on this idea? And why is it so difficult to change the way we look at things? So the basic nature of how our brain generates perception is actually a partnership. There's two things going on. It's actually a partnership. Oh, there go the balloons. That's so funny, this AI thing. It's what's funny about the AI thing is that there's so many people trying to learn how to make it happen. And then the people that have the function of making it happen are trying to figure out how to make it stop happening. Very, very analogous of the crazy life of humans. So the basic nature of how our brain generates perception is a partnership between our brain as well as our, as I call it, virtual reality suit, right? It's a partnership between the way my brain works, but also my five senses, my sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing, things like that. That's how I'm interfacing with the world. So it's a partnership perception, right? So all of that stuff. And we always have to acknowledge that for in large part has been programmed. And you're walking around today trying to execute, and that's happening, right? So generating perception is both the product of our brain's internal prediction making. Think about that. When you're perceiving something, your brain is actually predicting what's going to happen before you even decide what it's going to happen. So it's cross-checking any past experiences that you've ever had in your life. And then you think that your sense-making, virtual reality suit is perceiving on its own, completely untethered to it. No, it's being influenced and coerced by that prediction making machine. And it's actually only looking narrow-mindedly at things that validate what your brain comes up with. This is the biggest part of the challenge is, it's almost like you're looking at things with a flashlight, right? There's so many other things going on. If you just turned your head around and looked, and I'll talk about that, but also we don't even acknowledge everything else that might be going on, like the idea that somebody from a different vantage point, a different culture, a different mood would see things differently. So the difficulty in attempting to change the way we look at things is that the current way, right? That's the problem. It's like it's just 100% committed to being the way it perceives works. The current way we look at things is narrow-minded and it's committed to its ways. So this causes us to practice a sort of selective attention. Right? A lot of children, I think, have selective hearing, but let's look at the idea of attention. Where are we attending when we look at things? You'll notice that the brain is very, very narrow-minded and has selective attention. It's seeking what it is predicting, and its predictions are based on what it knows. But what you're trying to do when you change the way you look at things is uncover the unknown. How do you get something that is only focused on the known to start looking at the unknown? That's the biggest challenge. So looking at the small scope of what it is that we're seeing and then omitting, using things like cognitive bias, right? Omitting anything else. That's that phenomenon. You might have some political preferences or some religious preferences or some just humanistic core value preferences, right? Which you're very, very much committed to, and you'll stand for them. And sometimes that's the whole precipice of war, right? We'll stand for them. And anything that is otherwise, we will actually shun and devalidate, right? And we will look for anything we can to validate that we're right. When you have those things, that's called cognitive bias. So we'll act even in the absence of knowing for sure that what we're talking about is true. And also acknowledging that something else might be better. That's why I like to look at things as a scientist. Scientists care about facts and results. They don't care about who's right. So remember, when you took the driver's test, this is a cool analogy. When we take a driver's test, we're taught to see the big picture. Remember that? And the reason why is you want to make sure a car's not coming from the right. So you can't have selective attention when you drive. Another cool analogy, has anyone ever taken CPR? I got certified in CPR. Has anybody here been certified in CPR? What's the first thing you're taught in CPR when you approach a scene, right? That there's some sort of a person needing medical attention. What's the first thing that you learn? Well, you learn to survey the scene. So even if there's an emergency, the first thing you have to do is survey the scene and get the facts, get the other facts that would help you be of good service to this person, right? Prior to making the decision to attend, right? So there's an interesting component of attention. When you go about your day-to-day in your attempt to change the way you look at things, there's an easy one right there, is to survey the scene first. Somebody comes up to you or something happens today. Ask yourself, well, I see that I have thoughts and I have feelings about this, but I'm trying to see things differently so that the things I see change. So maybe I'd ask a different question, like, I wonder what it's like from their perspective, right? I wonder if I'm in a state right now that is emotionally triggered by this. And I wonder why I'm emotionally triggered by that. So right off the bat, that's how you can start looking at things differently, rather than, as I said, handing the keys of trust right over. So CPR, great. Survey the scene. Maybe just practice that one today. So we have this selective attention that is influenced by our current running program, the one that I was telling you booted up this morning until we came into talking today, right? That's the idea and the reason why in the Make Sense Academy, among the many other things that we do, we meet every morning and we capture control. We reclaim control of our day by reclaiming control of this morning. Right? And this conversation. If you're with me right now, even if you're watching this as a recording, you're tapping into a more conscious version, an opportunistic, high potential version of your brain. Otherwise, you would have just been, keeping up with the Joneses. You would hand the keys of trust over to your subconscious mind and hope that it goes well, hope that it goes better this day, right? So very, very important to recognize this selective attention that's caused by your current running program. And that is causing the way that you look at things. And that is the way that we're looking to change the way we look at things. I love that. The way. Make sense? So it's not easy, right? This way can pick and choose either positive or negative elements. This is what's amazing about you, right? Your brain processes 40 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and all of these things are going on. And I could be looking at somebody talking, but actually choosing to think about a noise that I hear behind me or a thought that I had this morning, right? So my brain can multitask. I can actually make it look like I'm thinking and interacting with something, which is sometimes perceived as rude, or I can, listen to something without even looking at it behind, because we have that haptic virtual reality suit. So very, very challenging to capture control of this. So the desire to change the way that we look at things requires the desire to have the things that we look at change. This is why goals and dreams are so important. If I don't have something that I want to change, my current reality or anything like that, then why would I do this work? Because it is work, right? So in episode 9 that just dropped today in the podcast, I went over the third step of what I call the interface response system, called assess, which is just a fantastic 4-step process. I always recommend that people start from the beginning of the podcast so you can get all the verbiage and the language and prepare you to learn the interface response system. But even if you learn this assessment process, which is my favorite, you'll love it. But what I do in there is I provide people with actual tools and strategies in that episode to look at things differently. So, you have to actually pull out a tool. If I see a nail and I want to push it into a piece of wood, what tool do I pull out? I pull out a hammer, right? So the same thing, you're going to use the same types of tools that I give you, and I'm going to share one of them with you today to execute on what you're trying to do right now, change the way you look at things. So in large part prompted by the experiences I've had working with plant medicine. So this is a controversial thing, and I'll just touch it a little bit. It's going to come out much bigger in my podcast, in my book, in this next book. But I've spent the last couple of years, and it's important to highlight this, working with plant medicine. And there's a very big misconception about plant medicine in the sense that it's like some sort of a drug or a hallucinogen. Only somebody that's actually worked with plant medicine knows what it is. But it's very, very much misinterpreted. But what's interesting about plant medicine, things like ayahuasca and psilocybin and sapo and all of that stuff, is it actually is an augment of your reality. It is not a complete shift of like going to a fantasy land. So just in short, what I experienced working with plant medicines, what's prompted my interest in this, is to be here with you just like this right now, and assuming a baseline reality, right? I'm talking to you through some sort of a video interface. You know how that works. We have our day. I'm married to my wife, Mika, AKA Chicken. I have a daughter. I have 2 boys, and all that reality is happening. But when you're in plant medicine, you don't feel anything, but you notice other things that are going on, right? You might notice some sort of a animal walk by that nobody else can see, right? So what's interesting about this is it made me very fascinated with the concept of augmented reality. And the only reason I'm sharing this with you right now is this. Real time, if you look at virtual reality goggles, if I put virtual reality goggles on, like the MetaQuest, that'll take me away to a different world. I no longer am in this world, and I could be actually coerced to believing that I'm in some sort of a forest walking around shooting arrows at things or something like that, or playing ping pong. That's virtual reality, right? When I say augmented reality, I'm talking more about something that you might be comfortable thinking about, like the Apple Vision glasses, where when you put these glasses on, it doesn't change your environment. It just adds to it. It augments it using apps and software and things like this. So you see people walking down the street or riding in the subway, and they can interact with everybody else, but there's something else going on. That's what augmented reality is. So I started asking myself, is what I saw when I was in plant medicine, these extra things, these augments of reality, or what somebody sees when they're using the goggles, is that something that no longer exists when you're outside of the medicine or not using the goggles? Isn't that a fascinating thought? Now, logic, if you use your current running program, you'd say no. The only reason you saw that is because you were in the medicine or you were wearing those goggles. But you can't really prove, and it does kind of prompt this question like, is there more than meets the eye? Isn't that an interesting thing? Like, do things exist in the space between what I'm seeing that I can't see because I'm looking at things a certain way? So that is what prompted me to start surveying the scene. I came up with a concept called holographic vision. You'll hear about that in much more depth in the episode that just dropped. But the reason why I started to practice getting the big picture and not allowing my knee-jerk reaction of what I saw and how I felt, because remember, my goal as well is to change the way I look at things, to expand and change the things that I'm looking at so I can have a better life experience, which is probably what we all want. So I started to just take a little bit of time and pause myself. This is part of that interface response system, and look around, and just whether I was going to take 2 steps to the right and get a different vantage point and see what it looked like there. Right? Perhaps another way of practicing holographic vision would be the idea of looking at it from the perspective, or just taking a hunch of the perspective of the person that you're interacting with, right? I wonder why they said that. I wonder where they come from. I wonder what their reality, their mood, their temperament is today. I wonder if somebody taught them about their political preferences and their religious preferences, just like I was. So here I am standing for something that I believe in, but who taught me to believe that? My life experience, my mother, father, teacher, preacher. So if somebody comes up to me and they have a different opinion, my knee-jerk reaction is to think they're wrong, I'm right, cognitive bias. But if I practice holographic vision because I want to see a bigger picture, then I might take 2 steps to the right or the left, or I might even walk in their shoes and recognize that they're just unconsciously projecting their perception just like I am. Who's right? Who's wrong? Nobody. Nobody. You know who's right? The person that thinks they're right. And what did you ever get for being right? Right? Because here we are at the door trying to change the way we look at things so that the things that we look at change, right? But you have to be willing to stop thinking that you're right. That's a tough one, right? You might be out already. So this is the big takeaway today in your Make Sense Monday. And I highly recommend that you check out the podcast. It's about a 40-minute podcast episode. Really goes into this heavy. And also, if you really want to start working on yourself, we openly welcome you to just comment, make sense, reach out to us. We'll send you a risk-free trial of the Make Sense Academy. It's going to have also business communicating tools in there and networking, but also a lot of this headspace stuff to claim control of your morning. Type Make Sense and we will send that to you. But here's the big takeaway that I wanted to give you today as a gift, because it's been so valuable for me. If we wish to change the way we look at things, we must openly and curiously allow ourselves to augment our current reality and the way that we look at things with a new vantage point. You have to be willing to step into a new vantage point. If you're not willing, then that's okay, but you're not going to be able to change the way you look at things, right? Step outside our comfort zone, which is where we know growth takes place. And where does the biggest growth take place? Outside the biggest comfort zones, right? The ones that are locked in, the strongest. That's where the biggest ones are, right? That's why everybody's getting into these cold plunges and just shocking the heck out of their system by doing all these things, right? Because of the growth that they seek. So step outside our comfort zone and challenge our current way of looking at things with a protective spotlight. Don't forget about that spotlight today. When you come up with an opinion of what you think is going on, just remember the spotlight or the flashlight and use things like this concept of holographic vision or surveying the scene, getting the bigger picture, right? To start surveying everything and see what else is going on. Remember, the plant medicine analogy was just, I found out that there's more going on than meets the eye. And it made me curious. Right. And that's scary because I realized that I've been looking at things through a very, very narrow minded pinhole of a sense making vision. Right. That's selective attention. So once we start practicing this, I am confident, very confident, that you will start to feel, and start to see the things that you look at change, because you'll be looking at them differently. So thank you so much for being here today. This is Make Sense Monday. I'm Dr. JC Doornick. This will be on our YouTube channel, Rise Up with Dragon Everything. And we hope to see you in our community one day. Have an amazing day. Love and appreciate you all.